Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's session. My name is Danny, and I'm the event planner for the New York Reactor. Before we begin, please take a moment to review our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Useful links will be shared in the chat. This session is recorded and will be available on demand in 24 to 48 hours in the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. Which brings us to today's session. It will run for approximately 1 hour with times for questions throughout. I will now turn it over to our speakers for introductions.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining our Reactor session today. Today, we're in an exciting, amazing session to show you. We have Shireen and Kevin joining me today. We're going to be talking about mastering data movement in Microsoft Fabric, right? With batch, real-time streaming, and mirroring, right? So let's get to it. Now, before we start, right, one more thing to note is that our session today is part of our data factory in Microsoft Fabric at Reactor Wave 2 session. And you can see on screen, right, we had several sessions that has already been done, but many, many more for you. We have up to 32 sessions in our Wave 2. So hopefully what we want to do is to bring you the best and the latest on data factory in Fabric to show you all the amazing capability that our team have release or about to release for you to learn more, ask questions, and deep dive into several of the data integration capability that we offer. So as I mentioned, my name is Wilson Lee. I'm the Principal Product Manager in Microsoft Data Integration team. I lead database mirroring in Microsoft Fabric. So let's dive into this, right? So for folks who have been with us, or you maybe saw us in the conferences, or maybe have already been through some of the Reactor session that we have gone through, you are super familiar with this slide, right? We're talking about Fabric, right? But for all those who are new to maybe to Fabric, or you maybe just stumble onto this video and want to learn more, you can think about Microsoft Fabric. It's a SaaS platform that actually unify all of your data analytics tool in one single place, right? Of course, within Fabric, you'll see tools like Data Factory, which we'll dive in a bit more into it. Kevin's going to talk more about real-time intelligence, and you can do data engineering, running notebooks, or even provision your own SQL database in Fabric as well. But many of you might also be very familiar with Power BI, right, to do your reporting. But the whole point about, or the whole notion about Fabric is that we're bringing all these capability under one SaaS platform and run it on top of OneLake. And OneLake will be very important. I'll talk a little bit about why as well. And of course, everything that we do will be infused with AI, and then of course, integration with Purview for governance as well. Now, and also, when we talk about Fabric, we always talk about this is an AI-powered data platform, right? And of course, we have it will enable you to run many of your workload for everyday business users. But one thing that we will focus on today is to talk about that open AI-ready data lake, right? Remember earlier I talked about the fact that OneLake is super important, and this is one that we need to dive into, right? We always equate OneLake as the OneDrive for data. We believe that the fact that once that you land your data into OneLake in a single open format, we use Delta Verde Parquet, right? Once that you land your data into OneLake itself, all the workload, the amazing capability that I've talked about earlier on will light up by itself, right? So the most efficient way for you to use all of Fabric is to actually have your data in OneLake and in the format that you need it. And of course, with the data inside OneLake in the proper format itself, you have your MIPS label, the PII scans, all the amazing compliance things that are coming with it will be available for you to use as well. Another benefit of OneLake is the fact that you just need one copy of the data for all of your compute, right? No matter if you decide to use that one copy of data that is in OneLake, share it with different teams, different organizations, or different coworkers that you have, as long as the data is landed in one lake, right? As I mentioned earlier, is that all the engines on top, no matter using Spark, T-SQL, KQL, or any other services that we support in Fabric itself, will light up and will be able to understand that format. And also for all the workload, we'll also be able to write into the same format inside one lake itself. So that is the amazing beauty of what one lake can bring to you. Now, when I talk about one lake, right, one thing that you might ask, and one thing that you might always think about, moving data, it's actually, especially at enterprise scale, it's actually a very, very difficult thing to do, right? It's not very easy. Now, imagine folks who needed to move data in batch, right? You have to, if you do it yourself, you have to worry about the latency between like getting the data and having the data available, in this case in one link, right? You also have to figure out all your dependency. You need to make sure that scheduling also makes sense. And those really adding to the complexity if you do this by yourself, right? One more, as you know, right, whenever your batch, when you do batch data movement, if there's error and inconsistency, it will just ruin your whole batch, right? And then you will have data quality issues down the line, right? And then imagine the fact that you have a large data set, right, in your source data, right, that you need to move, right? You need to go in and provision resources, and it could be resource intensive depending on things that you need to do. And then, of course, troubleshooting all the connection failures and copy issues or any issues is actually another task for you to do if you have to do it by yourself. For those folks who are required to actually bring incremental data into any places, right? Tracking change data is always a challenge, right? I've seen folks, and maybe you're one of them in the call on the watching this video as well, is that for you to maintain watermark and maybe to actually figure out what are the changes that you need to bring in without the native support of CDC on your source data source, it's actually quite complicated. And there's many ways that you can introduce errors into the process, right? Which is also, I mentioned about that, the fact that in order for you to maintain that consistency, right, to avoid corruption, it's a big deal, right? Handling schema change, right? Imagine one day me as the guy who make a lot of changes from the sources, and then Shireen has to come when I come back from when I go to vacation. I ask, hey Shireen, please help me to actually bring this data set into, let's say, one lake. In this case, if Shireen has to be the one who actually need to handle this, all the changes I make, it's actually quite complicated, right? Performance bottleneck is another one, right? You want to make sure that even though the main goal to actually bring in incremental data is that you can bring in just the changes efficiently, right? So performance bottleneck is another challenge that you need to worry about. And of course, with incremental data, right, monitoring the data movement and basing on the historical pattern and how we actually do that, where you can actually find ways to actually make sure that the way that we're bringing that incremental data efficiently, it's quite a challenge if you have to do it by yourself. And then last but not least, real-time data movement, right? Imagine that with real-time, with you're really dealing with a vast amount of data set, right? Bringing that data, moving that data at scale without bottleneck is actually quite hard. And you have to do so with minimum delay because we're talking about real-time data here. The goal is to actually get this in real time. So delay is especially a challenge if you have to deal with that with yourself. And as we mentioned earlier on, consistency, reliability, managing system failure, and recover from those failures, it's quite a task in order for you to do this by yourself at scale, right? So this is where Microsoft Fabric comes in, right? And then we'll first focus on data factory, right? Because when you go to Fabric, the first thing you think about, okay, if I want to ingest data, you really think about data factory, which is sort of the front door of Fabric for you to bring data into Fabric for many other use cases, right? When we talk about data factory, we're really talking about several things, right? First and foremost is the best-in-class connectivity, right? as we have here, we have more than 170 plus built-in connectors and many more for third parties for you to use and connect to the source in order for you to move data, right? And then we have more than 1,000 custom sources where many of you may be watching online that have already partnered with us to build on top of our connector SDK as well, right? To actually bring us, and we're not kidding when we're talking about we have the best in class connectivity for you to choose from to be able to move your data one way or the other, right? And then, of course, one thing that we have announced or shown at FabConf US earlier this year, or earlier in a couple of weeks away. It feels longer, but it's only a couple of weeks ago. We talked about that we now have the Azure Key Vault integration that is already available in Sneak Peek for folks to use if you have your credentials stored in Key Vault and you want to actually use this as part of the connections and connectivities in Data Factory or all of Fabric as well. We currently have a sneak peek that you can sign up for prior preview and then be able to use that, but it's coming to you very, very soon, right? And of course, one thing that it's really a big deal that we brought to you in Data Factory is the ability to connect to your sources either behind a VNet or behind a firewall or behind on-premise as well, right? So the notion of us being able to bringing this capability to you with pipeline, copy job, and mirroring as well, right? Using VNet Data Gateway is a big deal for many of our customers as well. And then one thing to note about Data Factory is that we offer petabyte scale data movement, right? For all the fans out there that you're watching this and you're already using Azure Data Factory, you know about the capability that we can do. And we have brought that the same engine into Microsoft Fabric as well. You can now use this. This engine is running on all of our copy activities, no matter if it's in copy activities or copy job. Underneath the hood is the same petabyte scale data movement that you can leverage, even in data flow as well, right? We have fast copy that will enable you to do that in order for you to move data. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but you can expect the same engine is running underneath the hood to actually helping you to move data at scale, right? And of course, for folks who need more orchestration, imagine that the fact that you have multiple activities other than just moving data, you want to provision a notebook that can actually do more down the stream using Spark, or maybe you want to have an alert when something is done. And many of these activities that you want to orchestrate together, we have data pipeline to actually help you to do almost everything that you need to do for all your data integration need, right? And this will help you to running this pipeline, no matter based on trigger or it can be scheduled as well. Many of these things can be done. And of course, all this no-code data orchestration is already done with we already have integration with Copilot that can actually help you to do more, right? And of course, for folks who are big fans of our Power Query offering, right? We also have data flow, which offer you with data transformation with enterprise scale, right? Data flow, you can think about it as it will work with many different sources that we have, right? But it really helps you to really transform your data at scale, right? No matter if you need to clean your data or prepare your data beforehand in order for you to do more downstream, you can do that with data flow Gen 2 right now inside Data Factory itself to help you to do all this. Now, for any folks who might be new to Data Factory, let me show you a demo and show you how do we actually bring all these things together for you to use.
The first enterprise feature I want to highlight is securely pulling secrets directly from Azure Key Vault, making credential management seamless within Fabric. I've already set up a connection to my Key Vault, and my Azure Blob Storage connection requires an access key. Instead of hard coding it, I'll navigate to my configuration settings and click the key button next to authentication. From here, I'll simply select my Key Vault reference and secret name, and that's it. Secure seamless access is now fully integrated into Fabric, ensuring proper way of managing sensitive credentials. Now let's transition into my pipeline. This is a metadata-driven pipeline that seamlessly moves my product orders data through the medallion architecture, from bronze to gold and gold layer and one lake at petabyte scale. A common challenge in data processing is dynamically handling different inputs. Instead of creating separate pipelines for each dataset, I can use parameterization to make my workflows fully flexible. Looking at my copy activity, I've created a parameterized connection string that allows me to set dynamic content from the path. No more static connections, and I can parameterize them effortlessly. If I open the expression builder, I can simply select my predefined parameter, and just like that, my connections are dynamic and easily configurable. Next, I've integrated a data flow activity to handle transformations. Let's open it up and see how parameterization makes it even more powerful. In this data flow, I'm transforming product orders data by grouping orders by region. My goal is to create a table in OneLake for each region. Instead of hard-coding regions, I can make this dynamic using parameters. I've defined a region parameter which dynamically filters data by the region. The default value is Eastern, so my query currently filters for Eastern orders. When I use this parameter in my orders by region query, the link icon indicates that the query dynamically adjusts based on input. Since my destination is a SQL database, region-specific tables automatically appear in my region database. Before heading back to the pipeline, I have to highlight another highly requested feature. You can now save a data flow without automatically publishing or triggering a refresh behind the scenes. Let's hit save and see how we can leverage this new parameter from within a pipeline. If I go back to my pipeline, I can configure my data flow activity, and I can see after selecting my data flow, I have a new section to input the parameters. Here, I can input my region parameter, and I'll use the expression builder to give it a parameterized value from the get metadata activity. Inside my for each loop, this pipeline will iterate over each region, dynamically processing orders from all the regions that I have. Skipping ahead, you can see my pipeline has successfully run. Checking the output, we can see each region's data was processed separately. First activity, the region was Eastern, the second is Southern, the other one is Northern, and the last one is Western. If I head to my database, I'll see 4 separate tables corresponding to product orders for each region for my tables.
Awesome. So but one question you might want to ask, right, is that what are other ways that if you just want to move data into OneLake, what are other ways to do it? So let me introduce you to Shireen. Shireen, are you going to tell us about what are other ways that we can actually move data to OneLake on top of what I've just shown to everybody today?
Yeah, that is correct, Wilson, and thank you so much. So hi, everyone. My name is Shireen. I am a product manager who works closely with Wilson and Kevin, and I work specifically on mirroring. So I'm excited to show you different things on how we can actually bring data specifically into Fabric. So of course, when we're talking about OneLake, right, we want it to be an easy solution for you guys to bring your data in, right? So the most simplest way to bring your data in is through shortcuts and mirroring. So both of these different items allow you to get data from cross platforms, cross cloud platforms, which is on cloud systems, on your on-premises data solutions as well. And the thing with this is that specifically, these two ways are probably the most seamless way, the most easiest way to actually bring data in, which requires minimal setup, minimal configuration as well. So let's first talk about shortcuts. So shortcuts in Microsoft Fabric, they're basically virtual pointers that allow you to unify your data across various sources. So this includes both internal and external sources from Microsoft. And the thing with this is that you don't have to physically move your data, right? You don't physically duplicate the data either. This is similar to virtual pointers, symbolic links that you might be familiar with, that just allows you to access your data behind with file systems specifically. So for example, if I have data, in an Azure Data Lake storage, ADLS Gen 2 account, an Amazon S3, any other S3 compatible sources, a Google Cloud Storage system as well, and even Dataverse, I can actually point to those specific file systems in those sources and bring that data directly into Fabric. So the nice thing with this is that the data stays wherever it is, and there's just a symbolic link that I'm attaching to that specific file system or data source to bring the data into Fabric. So whenever there's a data change that is going on specifically in your file system, it will automatically get replicated through the shortcut system directly into Fabric. And the nice thing with this also is that I want to show a quick demo of how this actually works. So instead of me talking more, I want to actually show you deeply how this entire system works. And you'll actually see these different things, components being working together from different sources as well. So let's go ahead and roll the video.
Let's see how Microsoft Fabric can bring together data from multiple clouds into a unified data estate. We're going to start by creating a new lakehouse in OneLake within Fabric. All I have to do is give it a name, press create, and in a couple of seconds, I have an enterprise-ready lakehouse ready to go. Now we can bring data into the lakehouse by using any of the 150 connectors that we have here. But we don't want to do that in this case because we don't want to physically move the data. So instead, we're going to use shortcuts. Shortcuts allow us to link to data wherever it is and be able to query it and use it in Fabric without creating any unneeded copies of the data. For this example, we have a variety of marketing campaign assets we'd like to include in our project that are being stored in Amazon S3 buckets. We're just going to connect to the S3 bucket, point to the data we have there, and within a couple of seconds, we have it linked in our lakehouse. Now we can access all of these assets here in Fabric, and you can see some of the beaches next to our hotels that we're using in our marketing. But I also have some additional campaign assets I want to work with, and they happen to be on my desktop. To bring in these additional images, I'm just going to use Windows Explorer. You can think of OneLake like being OneDrive for your data. So just like you have OneDrive showing up in Windows Explorer, you have OneLake showing up here as well. If I browse inside of OneLake, you can see all of the workspaces that I have access to from Fabric, and I can navigate to the solution we're working with, and I can see what we've already created a shortcut to in the Amazon S3 bucket. And now I can bring in my additional assets for activities we offer at our hotels, and I can just drag them and drop them into a new folder in my lakehouse. These are added into OneLake, and if I come back to my lakehouse in Fabric, you can see them already showing up. This is great, but analyzing marketing campaign assets is only a small part of the project I'm trying to build. The most important piece is getting access to the tables of data tracking our marketing performance. For this data, my organization is using Databricks with data that is also stored in Amazon S3. Here I can see the Delta directories in the S3 bucket. And again, I want to bring this data into OneLake in Fabric without making a copy of the data. So I'll create a new shortcut. All I have to do is connect, provide the settings to access those tables, and within a couple of seconds, the tables show up here in Fabric, and it is ready for me to query and use in my data solution. Now, in addition to our marketing data, I also need to bring in sales data for my solution. And in this case, our sales data is stored in Azure in ADLS. Again, I can just create a shortcut to the underlying data so I can use it without data duplication. And just like that, here in Fabric, I'm pulling together data from both Azure and Amazon with data I've loaded manually into Fabric, and it's all coming together into a single solution. And now we can start running queries across the data. Let's switch over to the data warehouse experience in Fabric, and we're going to write some SQL queries. This query is going to join data from the tables in AWS with the tables in Azure, and it just runs. And behind the scenes, Fabric is taking care of accessing the data and getting the result with what is essentially a cross-cloud query, and I didn't have to do anything extra. It just works that easy in Fabric. Now, many users don't know how to write SQL queries, so for those users, we have the ability to add semantic models right on top of my data in Fabric. Again, everything is working automatically with shortcuts, so no duplication of data is needed. And I can define relationships and measures to enrich the data to make it much easier to access for reporting and analysis in Power BI. And now let's switch over to Power BI to see how we can analyze the data. Of course, since we've integrated Copilot into Power BI, I can just describe the report I'm looking for, and Copilot will look at the data model and the data we've pulled together, and then automatically create an interactive report based on my request. The report is fully interactive, and I can slice and dice the data. But remember, the data is being queried automatically using the shortcuts back to where the original data lives, with Fabric taking care of everything to access, query, and join the data behind the scenes. As you've seen, we can use shortcuts in Fabric to seamlessly bring data together from wherever it currently lives and use it all the way through my data estate to my end user applications without any unneeded data duplication.
Awesome. So you have just seen how shortcuts enables us to bring data from all these variety of different different file systems, right? So we saw, S3, GCP, ADLS Gen 2, right? And this is, once again, these are all virtualizations of specifically your files and your folder systems. But how about, what if we want to actually use mirroring, not just mirroring, but also for like databases specifically? And that's actually where mirroring comes into the picture. So we talked about about file systems, right, which is the virtualization for shortcuts that we're using. But now when we're talking about databases, right, and we want to replicate entire database solutions directly into Fabric, that's where mirroring comes into the picture. So what mirroring is, right? Mirroring in Microsoft Fabric is basically designed to move your entire external database systems directly into one lake. So this is not just only your initial data, but it's also your change data that is being, reflected from your source into your destination, which is Fabric, right? So in this situation, what happens is that you can mirror all of your tables, your different multiple tables in your databases as well. Your entire database specifically can come into Fabric. And what happens behind the scene is that there's an initial snapshot of the data that happens, right? So whatever is living in your database as of right now will get mirrored over into Fabric. And then any of your changes, right? Your change data that is happening, any of your inserts, your updates, your deletes, your upserts, all being reflected over using our chain data capture CDC technology in the back end, right? So this is basically a one-step replication, CDC-based replication tool, which you can use through mirroring. And we call it database mirroring, just specifically for your databases that are coming in. We also have, Databricks, Azure Databricks, your Unity catalog, which is metadata mirroring specifically as well, which you can bring in. And then, of course, the shortcuts are for your file systems that you can bring in as well, right? So when we're talking specifically about mirroring, bringing your external databases directly into Fabric. And we want to keep all that specifically into one lake. And we have, multiple sources that we kind of support as of today. So right now we support Snowflake and Azure SQL DB, which is generally available as of today. So if you guys want to go use it, please go use it. And today we do have public preview for Cosmos DB, Azure SQL MI, and Databricks Catalog, which is Databricks Catalog is that metadata mirroring, which I was kind of talking about, which brings your Unity catalog specific metadata into Fabric. And as of a few weeks ago, if you were there at FabCon in Vegas, we did release another source into public preview, which is mirroring for Azure PostgreSQL. So we're just constantly hearing everyone's feedback around this topic, right? And especially if you guys are on the call, please let us know what other sources you would like to see in mirroring, because we do like to take that pretty seriously in terms of what sources we want to bring in the future. So moving on, this is, sources specific related, but we've also heard a really common request among the community specifically on bringing data behind a firewall, right? So if you have data in a private network or behind a private link, for example, we want to actually enable you to bring that data directly into Fabric as well. So once again, as of a couple weeks ago, we have released mirroring connectivity behind a firewall. So now you can use the existing Azure Virtual Network or the on-premises data gateway to actually connect to your sources behind a firewall. And today we are supporting the sources specifically for Snowflake, Azure SQL DB, and Azure SQL MI. But our goal in the future, the next few months, the next years, is to actually enable connectivity behind a firewall for all of our sources. I mean, you'll actually see that, happening soon. And if you go to the next slide, we actually have Azure SQL MI in a private preview as of right now. So if you guys are interested in being part of that private preview, please do scan that QR code or sign up with the link, which is over there. And we'll actually post something in the chat too at the very end for you to access this. So if you want to be one of our first users to give us feedback to see if it's working properly, please do, fill that form out. So moving along, we have another source that, is highly requested among the community, and that is mirroring for Oracle database, right? So we're talking about, bringing that Oracle database, Oracle data directly into Fabric using that same mirroring technology. And we're actually getting signups for this specific, feature as well. So once again, if you're interested, do scan that QR code and be part of our initial round of customers who try this feature out. So now, I've kind of talked a lot about mirroring, but I kind of want to show you how this actually works in Fabric. So the next video, what we're going to talk about is actually showcasing how the nits and grits of this mirroring capability actually works. And we'll start with mirroring for Oracle. So let's roll the video.
Directly from my Fabric homepage, I'll go ahead and create a new item. Just as how other mirroring sources are displayed, you will now see a tile from mirroring for Oracle show up here as well. I'll go ahead and click on it, and immediately I'll be able to either create a new connection or use an existing one. I'll create a new one. And here you'll see that I have a field to select my on-premises data gateway. I'll go ahead and select my on-premises data gateway and proceed. After a few seconds, you'll see all the tables inside my Oracle database. By default, all tables are selected, but you can choose specific ones if needed. I'll go ahead and filter my data and bring in 5 tables, and you can see a preview of the first few rows on the right-hand side. After giving my destination database a name, we'll start the replication process with a single click, and that's it. The initial snapshot may take some time, but within minutes, the Monitor tab shows a replication in progress. After refreshing, we can see all tables successfully replicated along with the details like row count, replication status, and completion timestamps. If I navigate to my SQL Analytics endpoint, I can go ahead and verify that all my data has been replicated over. If I click on the tables, customer, I can see a preview of the rows here. Now, we constantly have change data such as inserts, updates, and deletes occurring on my Oracle tables, and we want to see them propagated over into Fabric. I'll go to my Oracle database and insert 5 rows to my customers table. After running the commands and verifying that they have been added, I'll go back to Fabric and verify that the changes have been replicated over. If I go back to my SQL Analytics endpoint, I can see that those rows went from 103 to 108, confirming that the rows have been replicated over.
Awesome. So you guys just saw how easy it was to set up the database mirroring for Oracle. And if we were in person, I would ask how many people are actually familiar with mirroring, but it is actually very similar to all of our experiences that we have for our existing sources. So nothing has really changed, but that's like a basic introduction into like how mirroring for Oracle actually worked. And please do fill out that QR code if you're interested in being part of the private preview. So now another thing which we are actually releasing, and I think I see that in the comment section as well, is supporting Delta change feed, right? So whenever there's an insert, whenever there's an update that is happening, on your source system, we've heard from the community multiple times that we want to have a granular level of understanding of what is actually happening behind the scenes, right? So what row is inserted, what row is deleted, what was actually happening with the data. So we actually are really excited to announce that we're actually supporting Delta change feed for mirroring for Fabric. So this is actually across all of our mirroring sources, specifically, not just from Oracle or for any specific source, but for all of our sources, we're actually releasing this feature. So now what you can actually do is you can actually see the downstream consumption, downstream processing of actually what is happening when those CDC changes are happening in the back of the scenes. So without talking more about it, I actually want to show you a quick video of how this actually works. So you guys just saw mirroring for Oracle. Now we're going to actually see how those Delta change feeds actually look when you're querying these feeds through a notebook, for example. So let's go ahead and roll the video.
So what if we want to track the exact changes to our data, whether rows were inserted, updated, or deleted? We're thrilled to announce that mirroring now publishes Delta change feeds, giving you full visibility into every modification. This unlocks seamless integration with the Medallion architecture, allowing you to process only the changes you need while filtering out the rest. With notebooks, you can see what changes have been made with your mirror. The first command shows the snapshot of the data, which were the initial rows that we replicated over. And the output shows these rows were inserted, with the column showing what type of operation was done. In this case, an insert. Now, the second command shows the new incremental changes, which were the 5 rows that we changed. You can see in the Output tab that we did 2 inserts, 2 updates, and 1 delete. And in the table, you can see which row ID was affected, making it easier to see what change happened within your data.
Perfect. So now you can actually see granularly what is actually happening with your rows. So this is another exciting feature that we're releasing soon. So now to kind of just wrap up kind of the database mirroring specifically, we saw the sources that were currently available, right, which are in GA public preview, but we actually have 4 new sources that are coming up soon. We have mirroring for SQL Server, mirroring for SQL Server 2025, mirroring for Oracle, which you just saw, and these 3 sources specifically use that on-premises data gateway, so you can connect your data behind a firewall or on premises, or behind a private link. And then we also are supporting mirroring for Dataverse, which is really popular among the Power BI community as well. So these sources are coming in the next few months, and we do have private previews for these that are happening. So if you guys are interested, we'll be posting the links towards the end of the session. So, and one more time, this is specifically for the private preview for mirroring for SQL Server. So feel free to scan the QR code. for this one specifically. And, not just that, we have actually something more before we wrap it up, and that is mirroring for Google BigQuery. So this is another common source that we've actually heard from customers too, and we're getting ready for this specific one in the next few months. So if you're interested in being part of the preview, do fill out that form using that link or the QR code. And I think one more thing, which I kind of didn't highlight or put a lot of emphasis on, is that when you're using mirroring specifically for database mirroring for any of the sources that you have seen, it is actually all free. So free meaning that the consumption, like the actual compute costs are free and the storage costs are free, right? So the act of actually mirroring your data into Fabric is a free service that we provide to you. So definitely do take advantage of that when you are trying these features out. Cool. So now let's kind of proceed into something which is called a copy job, right? So copy job is something that we've released generally available, and it is a seamless way, for you to actually bring your data in, right? So for example, if I don't want to use pipelines to bring data in specifically, and I just want to, use batch data processing or incremental data processing, for example, as one, I want to make it really, really quick, I can actually use copy job in this instance, right? So and this is a way for you to simplify data ingestion, right? With pipelines and the copy activity specifically, you need to have like a specific pipeline to bring your data in. But with a copy job, it makes it really, really easy to actually get started with bringing your data in and making small little adjustments to it as well. So now that we've released general availability back in Fabric and during FabCon, there are a few new features that are coming in the copy job. And I want to actually show a quick demo of how that actually works with some of the new features that Wilson also talked about earlier in the presentation. So let's go ahead and roll this video.
The first feature I want to highlight is securely pulling secrets directly from an Azure Key Vault, making credential management seamless within Fabric. I've already set up a connection to my Key Vault, and my Azure Blob Storage connection requires an access key. Instead of hard coding it, I'll navigate to my configuration settings and click on the key button next to authentication. From here, I'll simply select my Key Vault reference and secret name, and that's it. Now we can easily manage sensitive credentials in Fabric. Now let's see how we can perform incremental data loads, allowing near real-time updates whenever there's a change. Let me show you how to enable incremental data loading with copy job. I have already created a new copy job, and I have some sales data on a SQL server behind a firewall, and I want to avoid full loads every time. I'll create a new connection to my SQL server. After entering the server name and connection name, you'll see that I have a field to select my VNet data gateway. Copy job now supports copying data behind a virtual network, so I'll go ahead and select my VNet data gateway, enter my authentication username and password, and proceed. After filling out the connection details, I'll select the database and tables I want to copy over. Then, for this example, I'll set the destination as another SQL database. For data movement, I'll choose incremental copy over batch by specifying the watermark column for each table. On the next screen, I'll see a summary, and I can also adjust the frequency of each run, and I'll change this to run every 5 minutes. Once we proceed, the copy job from my SQL server behind a firewall to the SQL database begins, with an initial snapshot of the tables copied in seconds. After that, only changes are transferred, saving both time and resources. For instance, if I go to my SQL server and insert a couple of rows to the customers table, only those 2 rows will be copied into the next run. And going back to my copy job, I can confirm that those 2 rows have been incrementally loaded in. If I want to edit the refresh rate, I can always go to settings and adjust the load rate at any time, and changes will be propagated over immediately.
Awesome. So you just saw how easy it is to actually bring that data directly into Fabric with the copy job, making simplifying your data ingestion processes. And with that, also something that which you saw in the video, right, is we're making it easier to actually do CDC, that we're introducing copy job that supports native CDC directly into Fabric. So you probably saw how we can actually, have to specify the watermark column for any changes that are happening. But now you no longer have to do that anymore with the native CDC capability through copy job. So that incremental refresh is already built in, and it also supports the various different amount of sources as well. So if you're interested in being part of the private preview for this specific feature, do scan that QR code and fill out that form. So now we've kind of talked about how easy it is to kind of bring data in, right? So this is specifically for, any type of, data that you have, sitting in your on-premises network, on your cloud. But what happens when you want to bring that real-time data in? And this is where Kevin comes into the picture, and he's going to talk about more about how we can bring that real-time data in. So on to you, Kevin.
All right, thanks, Shreen. Hi, I'm Kevin Lamb. I'm the Director of Product Management for Azure Messaging and Stream Processing in Fabric. And today, on the next slide, I'll show you where we're kind of going to shift our focus to the real-time intelligence workload. So before we were talking about one-lake shortcuts and the ability to move data with Data Factory. And a lot of folks have needs for moving their data in real time. I need the data now or as it happens. And so that's where the real-time intelligence workload comes in. So on the next slide, we'll see how we're breaking down the real-time intelligence workload, where we have, if we're starting at the top, the first part is ingestion. We want to be able to acquire that data. And behind ingestion is the event streams items. The event streams items is responsible for the streaming connectors and being able to ingest that data, as well as stream processing, so that as that data is coming in, we can process that on the fly. Next is doing real-time analytics. So real-time analytics is using our event house, where you can do interrogations on petabytes of data and doing your operational types of queries on that data in real time, really fast on those queries. One of the things that we introduced at FabCon this year was the introduction of Digital Twin Builder. So now you can create an ontology or a model of your physical environment and have that represented in Fabric, so that now you have context for all those events and messages that are coming in for what's the item that it's affecting. For example, you can have a contextual representation of a factory pump on your manufacturing floor. Next is you want to be able to get visual representation of what's happening in your real-time data, and that's where real-time dashboards come in, where you can have interactive dashboards that's going directly against the event house, that you can go and create either maps or charts based on that real-time data. Next, we have rules. Rules is using our activator item that you can construct very simple rules that react to any event that comes in, to pretty complex rules that determine the average of, for example, a refrigerator over a certain period of time. And if it's over that threshold, then it goes and triggers a particular action. And those actions then can invoke either components within Fabric, for example, triggering off a pipeline, or triggering a notebook, or sending a message to somebody on your team, so through Teams or through an email, and even being able to invoke a workflow with Power Automate. All of this comes together with the real-time hub, and the real-time hub helps you do that discovery of all these items and organizes all these real-time artifacts in a single place that helps you find your streams and then be able to interact with them. And we'll go into a couple of aspects of what we have in real-time intelligence in these next slides. So the first one's about real-time hub. And so since we're focused particularly on how we're doing data movement, I'm going to focus on a couple of these components. So in the real-time hub, this is where users can discover, manage, and leverage all their streaming data sources within Microsoft and across Microsoft clouds. So you'll be able to see all of your streaming tables and all your streams that are ingested into this real-time hub. You'll be able to act on that. So you can right-click and explore that data, and you immediately get a means by which you can start querying that real-time stream. Or you can use AI to create a real-time dashboard. So we're leveraging AI to go interpret the data that's in your event house, and we'll create automatically a real-time dashboard for you that we think makes most sense. Then, of course, when it comes up, you can go and interact with it and tweak it to what you need. Next, we have, go back, we're not quite done yet, you can browse existing different Microsoft sources. So one of the things that we wanted to make sure was really easy. If you have access to some Azure resources, we want to make sure that it's super easy to go discover those Azure resources, for example, an event hub or an IoT hub or a database that you want to be able to go and capture change feeds from. We leave that at your fingertips. So then you don't even have to enter credentials, because we're using the credential that you have logged into Fabric to go connect to those sources in in Azure. And we're going to extend those Microsoft sources, not only to be able to look at which sources you have access in Azure, be able to pull in monitoring data from those sources, as well as soon introducing the integration with Dataverse, so then you can get change feeds from Dataverse itself. We also have the ability to have out-of-box connectors, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. And then finally, subscribing to Fabric events, which I'll have a whole slide on, so that you can go in and discover the types of events you have in Fabric you can listen to. So on the next slide, we'll actually go into event ingestion. And so what we've done is we've created a set of connectors that special handle streaming types of workloads. So, for example, you could have a streaming broker like a Kafka cluster or a Confluent Cloud or AWS's Kinesis, and you want to be able to pull that stream of data into Fabric. You may need to connect to a message broker, for example, Azure Service Bus that has a queue or a topic type of model that you can go and pull those messages off those queues and streamify those. We also support change data feeds. So change data capture, we leverage Debezium under the covers so that we can listen to databases and all the changes that are happening to it. So then you can react to those changes in those databases. For example, if you're looking for a particular person, and if that person has made a purchase in the last 5 minutes that's over $50, then you want to send an event to that person, like an email, and appreciate their purchases. And the last part is discrete sources. So discrete sources are things that emits events when something happens. So for example, Azure Event Grid, when a storage event or a new VM gets created in your VM scale set, we can get those types of discrete events. We're very excited that we announced at FabCon a new set of connectors that comes with that list. So the first one is MQTT v5. So if you have devices that are emitting MQTT events, that's a particular protocol that's very popular with devices to make it really easy to transmit in small packets. And so we have that native connectivity, so you can connect to any MQTT v5 broker, for example, HiveMQ as an example. We've also partnered with Solace to create the Solace Pub Sub Plus connector so that we can connect to their queues and topics and draw those messages into Fabric. We've also created a weather feed connector. So this is, we've had a lot of customers ask us for scenarios where they want a real-time weather feed coming in. They can get that data land into an event house and start doing referential analytics based on what the weather is going to be like in the next few days. So they can do charts and analysis and react to those weather events. Next is the ADX Streamify. So Azure Data Explorer is kind of our sister to Event House that we have in Fabric, but now you can go ahead and for every time you add a row in that table in Azure Data Explorer, we can go and ingest that and treat that like a stream and pull that into Fabric. And then finally is Event Grid. So Event Grid namespaces not only allows you to bring in events from Azure, but Event Grid is also our cloud-based MQTT broker. So if you want to be able to talk to an MQTT broker in the cloud, Event Grid is the right broker to use. And we have native integration now with Event Grid so that you can get those messages ingested really simply with a few clicks to get that connection to the namespace. Next part is publishing, consuming events with custom endpoints. So under the covers in an event stream, we're actually creating a streaming broker for you. And so when you create one of these custom endpoints, for example, for a source, we're going to provide you with a Kafka or Event Hub endpoint so that you can have your native applications or clients talk directly to an event stream. So for example, if you were talking to a Kafka cluster on-prem and you wanted to be able to talk to Kafka in Fabric, you just create this custom endpoint on your event stream, and you can take that client, change the connection string, and talk to your event stream. And then the same for the destinations. And then you can pull from an event stream. You can do your stream processing in that event stream, and then pull the results downstream as well with either your MQP client, your Kafka client, even HTTP. One of the things that we're working on that we've heard a lot of feedback for is, hey, if you don't have one of the connectors that I need, let me build one of my own. So we are working on allowing you to bring your own custom connectors. So stay tuned, and you'll see that coming soon. So on the next screen, we'll talk about stream processing. Before we get there, one of the important things to us is that we want to be able to build the streaming connectors that you need. And so if you take a moment and fill out the survey, you can either go to the QR code or go to aka.ms/eventstreamsources and let us know the connectors that you're interested in, and we'll make sure that we address those as soon as possible, right? We only want to build the connectors that you need, not the ones obviously we need. So your feedback's always appreciated. Next is stream processing. So event streams kind of handles two aspects of your streaming capabilities. The first part we talked about, which is the ingestion of streams. And the next part is the actual processing of that stream before we actually route it to the destination. So we have a number of out-of-box transformations for being able to do the processing on that. So we can do transformations, filtering, and routing on those streams so that as that stream comes in, you can decide that you only want a portion of that stream to land in a particular destination. You can also take advantage of aggregation, so windowing. I mentioned that scenario before for Activator that can react to a time window of events. You can do that in that stream processing, so then you can actually create new data points as part of those aggregations. One of the things that we've introduced at early this year is a schema catalog. So this is in private preview, where you can go and define the schemas of the messages that are flowing through your stream, and that will help you not only be able to have that a priori knowledge of the streams of the events that are coming into your stream so that you can create the right transformations and maps, but as well as have validations for your messages to ensure that you have only the messages that you care about, so you have the right governance on those streams, and so you can trust what the content of those streams are. As well, we're doing some more advanced scenarios so that you have to do less mapping yourself. So for example, if you have a CDC feed where we know the schema of the source table and you want to push that into an event house, we understand how to create those tables on the fly for you and then ingest that data automatically, and you don't have to set up that transformation yourself. The next part is the low-code stream processing. So, on the canvas, we made it super easy and accessible to create this drag and drop so that without any code, you can go and do this pretty complex stream processing. But sometimes you just want to get access to some code. I want to write some SQL so that I can do that work on my own, or you want to be able to get to some more advanced capabilities like building out a case statement. That would just be much easier in a few lines of code than creating a complex visual map for those filters. So we've introduced the SQL code operator. This is in private preview so that you can go ahead and write your code in SQL, and then that'll be part of your event stream itself. And so we give you a full-fledged editor with IntelliSense, so you can test your SQL before you go and publish it into your event stream. And finally, it's content-based routing. So we have a number of destinations that you can route all of your events to, including an event house. You can send it to an activator, to a lake house, and then to derived streams, as well as being able to have this custom endpoint that you can pull it yourself. So these derived streams enable you to transform the streams coming in so that downstream components can then pull from that derived stream and essentially looks like a new stream. And so with content-based routing, we get to interrogate the content of those streams and then route it based on that content. So for example, if you want to be able to take all the data from particular states, and each state goes to a different database, you can go and or a table in your database, you can go and configure it that way. Or if you want some information to go to a lake house and some information to go to an event house, you can do that based on the content itself. Okay, so that's stream processing. And next, we'll talk about Fabric events. So Fabric events is the set of events that are being emitted by the Fabric platform when things happen in Fabric. So it enables you to listen to changes that are happening. For example, if somebody drops a file into your OneLake, or a job finishes or has an error on one of the jobs that you create. And so a job would be like a notebook or a pipeline. Being able to react to changes into your workspace. So when someone creates an item in your workspace, you can go listen to those events. So those are all Fabric events that are emitted. And so we have a pub sub engine that we built into Fabric. And then you can subscribe to those events. And those subscriptions can either be through something like an activator, so that every time a file gets dropped in your OneLake, then you can go and trigger a pipeline that will then go and read that file. So then you don't have to do any hammer polling of those storage accounts. And we even ingest data from Azure Storage, so ADLS or Azure Storage, and then you can react to that and then go pull events from Azure right into Fabric and create this kind of serverless workload so that you're not constantly running, listening, and looking out for those events. So this is, we announced at FabCon that this is generally available, so go party on Fabric events. The last part is it's great that we're able to emit the events from Fabric, and we'll continue adding more events from Fabric that you can go and subscribe to. But we want to enable you to build your own business events so that you can have the same ability to go streamify those or be able to react to them and have your own pipeline. So for example, if I build a luggage tracking system and I discover that your luggage is lost, I can create one of these luggage lost events that a downstream component like a function or an activator can go and listen to. So that's something that we're working on, and stay tuned for what's going to come out from business events. Okay, so now what happens if you want to build your own solution and be able to move data into OneLake? So I'm going to go back and hand it off back to Wilson. Go ahead, take it away, Wilson.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. So Kevin talked about real-time data that you need to bring in, but we provide you, and Shireen talked about different ways that you can bring in the data without, let's say, necessarily creating a pipeline using mirroring, copy job. And earlier I talked about different ways that you can bring it in. But if you decide to say, hey, I do have an engineering team, or I would like to write my own application because I have some sources that might not be possible for Microsoft to support that, or I just need to do something that is very unique to your use case to bring in data, we do have an offering in mirroring. It's called open mirroring, that actually allows you to write your data into mirror database itself. So main difference you can think about between this and mirroring, that database mirroring that Shireen talked about early on, is that with database mirroring, we help you to connect to the source, whereas open mirroring, you decide how you want to write it into mirror database itself. Now with open mirroring, it's the same thing as these rest of the mirroring offering that we have. You still enjoy the free storage per tier of capacity and also the compute underneath the hood, where we help you to manage all the complexity and merging all the data, merging all the different insert, update, and deletes, and the fact that we make sure that it converted with efficiency inside OneLake itself into Delta Verde Parquet. That engine itself, that compute for that engine, it's also free in Fabric itself. So I'm going to skip the demo for today. But one thing to note is that no matter if you decide to write your data yourself, or you can also have an option to use with the many open mirroring partners that we have that's already out there. When we announced this back in November last year, we are adding many more partners as we speak, so then you can use those solutions to bring in data that we don't currently support or unique to your use case if you already have these pipeline running in production itself. So I just want to go through a bit of a overview, right, of what we talked about today, right? So how do you think about it when you come to Fabric, and how do you want to move data, right? So if you want to lend data into Fabric OneLake itself, the easiest way is through multi-cloud shortcut or your database. For shortcut, it's focusing on files. So if you have files, no matter it's behind on the cloud, behind a firewall, or you just have it open to the internet, if you have files, you use shortcut to bring it into the virtualize that file into Fabric OneLake itself. But if you have database, you use mirror database, right? You will, no matter if using database mirroring or open mirroring, if you have proprietary format or databases that you have to bring the data and you replicate the data over, database mirroring is the solution that you will use to bring the data into Fabric OneLake. Now, if you just want to copy data, no matter if you have batch format or you just want more knobs where you can actually do more tweaks and more, we call those premium DI features that you have of selecting different columns and you want to schedule it as your certain way, many things that you want to do, no matter if batch copy or incremental copy, you would use CopyJar for that. And of course, with real-time data, just like Kevin talked about this earlier on, if you need your data immediately, right, with events, right, into Fabric OneLake itself, you would want to use Event Stream. And then, of course, if you need to do enterprise-grade transformation, Dataflow Gen 2 is a great tool for you to use. You need to prep your data beforehand, so that Dataflow Gen 2 will be what you choose. And then, of course, last but not least, pipeline, right? If you need to orchestrate all these different activities together and making sure that not only bringing data, but you need to run a notebook or many different activities afterwards to have more notifications and many different things that you can do. You orchestrate all these things together, that's when you actually use a pipeline in Data Factory itself. But no matter which tool you use in Fabric, right, all roads lead to OneLake, right? No matter it's mirroring, event stream, copy job, open mirroring, many different ways. All roads lead to OneLake, and once your data actually lands in OneLake in the proper format, all the workloads on top will light up and will be able to consume your data with scale and with speed, right? So to close with our session today, right? So a couple of things, right? If you're not already using Fabric, we encourage you to do so. Please go try Fabric itself. We do offer a very generous 60 days free trial with an F64 SKU, about $17,000 of value. So please go try it out. Try out Fabric if you've not already done so. And then, of course, as Shireen showed early on, if you already have a capacity provision in Fabric, or you're using the Fabric trial that I mentioned the previous slide, please go ahead and try mirroring. You will see all these different capabilities already out there. And then if you want to learn more, right, please use the ahio.ms link to learn more about all the new features that we announced several weeks ago at FabCon US. Then you have all the information that you needed in addition to the session that we just talked about in this session as well. And then, of course, as Shireen mentioned, we have many capabilities that are in private preview right now in mirroring. So please go ahead and scan these QR code or use our ahio.ms link. Please go sign up and try this out, right? You will be in early stage of the product. You can tell us about all the feedback and how we can actually help to improve the product so that you'll be able to use this in your production workload. Same ask as well, right, with real-time intelligence as well. Kevin talked about the twin builder, the custom code that supports event stream, and also event schema set as well. All those are currently in private preview for use to use. So with that, I just want to thank you all. We're running a little bit over today, but I just want to thank you all for participating and listening to this in live or in on demand as well. Hopefully this gives you a little bit better idea when you are in Fabric. How do you decide what to use and where use to move data in Fabric? So thank you so much for your time, and hopefully you join us for future Data Factory at Reactor sessions. So thank you so much and have a nice day, everybody.